The Goal, delivered in San Francisco on March 27, 1900, Part 1. We find that man, as it were, is always surrounded by something greater than himself, and he's trying to grasp the meaning of this. Man will ever seek the highest ideal. He knows that it exists and that religion is the search after the highest ideal. At first, all his searches were in the external plane, placed in heaven in different places just according to his grasp of the total nature of man. Later, man began to look at himself a little closer and began to find out that the real me was not the me that he stands for ordinarily. As he appears to the senses is not the same as he really is. He began to search inside of himself and found out that the same ideal he had placed outside of himself is all the time within. What he was worshipping outside was his own real inner nature. The difference between dualism and monism is that when the ideal is put outside of oneself, it is dualism. When the God is sought within, it is monism. First, the old question of why and wherefore. How is it that man became limited? How did the infinite become finite? The pure become impure? In the first place, you must never forget that this question can never be answered by any dualistic hypotheses. Why did God create the impure universe? Why is man so miserable, made by a perfect, infinite, merciful Father? Why this heaven and earth, looking at which we can get our conception of law? Nobody can imagine anything that he has not seen. All the tortures we feel in this life we put in another place, and that is our hell. Why did the infinite God make this world? The dualist says, just as the potter makes pots, God the potter, we the pots. In more philosophical language, the question is, how is it taken for granted that the real nature of man is pure, perfect, and infinite? This is the only one difficulty found in any system of monism. Everything else is clean and clear. The question cannot be answered. The monists say that the question itself is a contradiction. Take the system of dualism. The question is asked why God created the world. This is contradictory. Why? Because what is the idea of God? He is a being who cannot be acted upon by anything outside. You and I are not free. I am thirsty. There is something called thirst over which I have no control, which forces me to think water. Every action of my body and even every thought of my mind is forced out of me. I have got to do it. That is why I am bound. I am forced to do this, to have this, and so on. And what is meant by why and wherefore? Being subject to external forces. Why do you think water? Because thirst forces you. You are a slave. You never do anything on your own because you are forced to do everything. Your only motive for action is some force. The earth by itself would never move unless something forced it. Why does the light burn? It does not burn unless someone comes and strikes a match. Throughout nature, everything is bound. Slavery, slavery. To be in harmony with nature is slavery. What is there in being the slave of nature and living in the golden cage? The greatest law and order is in the knowledge that man is essentially free and divine. Now we see that the question why and wherefore can only be asked in ignorance. I can only be forced to do something through something else. You say God is free. Again you ask the question why God creates the world. You contradict yourself. The meaning of God is entirely free will. The question put in logical language is this: what forced him who can never be forced by anyone to create the world? You say in the same question what forced him. The question is nonsense. He is infinite by his very nature. He is free. We shall answer questions when we can ask them in logical language. Reason will tell you that there is only one reality, nothing else. Wherever dualism has risen, monism came to a head and drove it out. There is only one difficulty in understanding this. Religion is a common sense, everyday thing. The man in the street knows that if you put it in his language, and not if it is put in a philosopher's language. It is a common thing in human nature to project itself. Think of your feeling with the child. You identify yourself with it. Then you have two bodies. Similarly, you can feel through your husband's mind. Where can you stop? You can feel it in infinite bodies. Nature is conquered by man every day. As a race, man is manifesting his power. Try in imagination to put a limit to this power in man. You admit that man as a race has infinite power, has an infinite body. The only question is what you are. Are you a race or one individual? The moment you isolate yourself, everything hurts you. The moment you expand and feel for yourself, you gain help. The selfish man is the most miserable in the world. The happiest is the man who is not at all selfish. He has become the whole creation, the whole race, and God is within him. So, in dualism, Christian, Hindu, and all religions, the code of ethics is do not be selfish, be unselfish, do things for others, expand.